me to be with Dr. Suresh. Here we are after he was awarded an honorary degree from Aristotle University, and he made a very interesting presentation about his research work. And he is one of the first interviewers in our special program. Dr. Suresh, it's our pleasure and honor to have you here. We would like a little bit of your a description of your activities in science and technology, your successes in science and technology.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I was trained as an engineer. All my degrees are in mechanical engineering. So the first 15 years of my career, I worked in mechanical properties of large structures like airplanes, major mechanical structures. And then my research work took a turn into looking at properties of thin films, nanomaterials, and small devices. And in the last 15 years, I've been focusing on the connections between properties, physical properties of cells and molecules and different human diseases, essentially bringing engineering and sciences into medicine for diagnostics, therapeutics, and drug efficacy assays and things like this. So that's essentially my journey. In addition to my scientific work, I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to lead a number of organizations that are very strongly focused on science and engineering. I had the privilege of being Dean of Engineering at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And then in 2010, President Barack Obama nominated me, and the United States Senate confirmed me to be the director of the US National Science Foundation. It's a wonderful organization that supports basic research in science and engineering in all fields of science and engineering. It's still the largest basic science research funding agency in the world. So that gave me a unique opportunity to look at science in many different disciplines, and it took me to different parts of the world, some unique life experiences, from the South Pole to the highest point of the Arctic Circle, and meeting with leaders in science and policymakers. And then subsequent to that, I was president of Carnegie Mellon University, and then currently I'm president of Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, which has emerged just within the past 25 years or so as one of the leading research universities in the world.
So there are two aspects of your life: managing a very big organization and also being a scientist. How you can, manage both during the career?
I think, it is difficult to balance what I would call personal scholarship with leadership that supports scholarship in large organizations. But on the other hand, it's not mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important in science, especially in science, in academia, that people who lead scientific organizations don't lose touch with science. Because in universities, the president of a university has to make a decision about whom to hire, whom to recruit, whom to nurture, whom to promote. So if you have not been active in science for a long period of time, it will be difficult to have the credibility among scientific colleagues that when you make tough decisions, they will follow through. Likewise, in research organizations, it's very important to know the cutting edge of fields. And if one is, because fields change very fast and scientific enterprise also changes, and it's being a scientist gives you an opportunity to understand what young people are going through as their careers are moving up in peer review, writing proposals, etc. So I think my primary job currently is to be president of a university, but at the same time, one can always find the time to do some significant personal scholarship, and that's what I've been very fortunate to have the support system to be able to do that during the past 15 years in different organizations.
So scientists and engineers can be also very good manager and CEOs and directors.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because there are theories around that mostly the managers should come from outside fields, not from engineering. But your example shows that it's not true.
Yeah, I would add that if you're thinking about a large corporation, you could be a marketing person, you could be a finance person, you could be a lawyer, you could be an engineer, you could be a scientist, you could be a communications person who can lead the organization. But in academia and research, if you're not a tenurable professor, it's very difficult that you'll become president of a university. So academia is very different, and I believe that the combination of scientific background and leadership is a very important aspect.
Mm-hmm. Which one do you enjoy most, leadership or science?
No, I enjoy both because as far as personal science is concerned, it's individual scholarship. It keeps your mind alive, it keeps you young, you still get to work with young PhD students and postdocs. It keeps you at the cutting edge of a field, and it keeps you hungry and active. You get satisfaction from doing things or writing things yourself, working with young people. I don't have the time to go to the lab, but at least I get the chance to design experiments, look at data, analyze data.
You do it as of this day, you do?
Yes, I do that. I'm writing papers, etc. So you get a particular joy out of doing this. At the same time, in a leadership role like being president of a university, you get a different kind of satisfaction. You get to recruit large numbers of young people. You look at their accomplishments. So it's almost like a parent getting joy out of the accomplishments of the children as opposed to one's personal accomplishment. So hopefully, by having the opportunity to do both, you get to enjoy your own individual contributions, but at the same time, vicariously derive a lot of pleasure by supporting, nurturing and recruiting young people and helping them succeed in their career. And there is a lot of satisfaction that comes with it.
How the world went to President Obama about you?
I have no idea. I have to ask him. But apparently,
what is their structure to find out the good people?
So
how they
I was told, again, I only third hand. I don't know how these, typically the way these things work, I don't know how it happened in my particular case. They usually start with a large number of names and they scan the whole country. So typically for something like a director of the National Science Foundation, they will look at all the university presidents, provosts and deans who are either engineers or scientists. They'll look at Nobel laureates, they will look at, and then slowly they will narrow that down. And then they'll see if that person has had some prior administrative experience. Otherwise, you can be a brilliant scientist, but if you have no prior experience, you cannot lead you have to be able to balance a financial, look at a financial statement and understand it, be able to testify to Congress. So there is a lot of considerations, and they have a large number of people going through this process and making sure that there is you don't have skeletons in your closet, so that you can get through the Senate for the confirmation. That's another criteria.
And you mentioned that basically you were surprised because you were not a registered Democrat. You're not
a registered Republican. I mean, either.
You also didn't give any donations, and it came by complete surprise.
Yes.
That's interesting. This is really good to be chosen in this way. But as a scientist and as a leader, at this stage of your life, in your life, you are a very good leader and a very good scientist. When did you decide to become a scientist? When was the first idea came to your mind?
So I was always, I did very well in school, elementary school, middle school as a student. And I especially did well in mathematics and science in school. At that time, when I was growing up in India, the natural step, the most prestigious universities, which were also completely free, were the Indian Institutes of Technology, which were engineering schools across the university, and they were highly sought after, mainly because the graduates, at that time, most of the students went abroad to do postgraduate studies. So that if you do well in school at that time, the probably one of the early considerations, unless you wanted to go into medicine or law,
why you didn't think about medicine?
Because I didn't have anybody in my family who was a doctor. There were no role models. We didn't have any lawyer in the family.
But did you have any scientists?
We didn't have any scientists. Neither of my parents went to university either, so nobody in my family went to university. But the path was very clear because you take an entrance exam. At that time it was 2 full days, 4 subjects, mathematics, physics, chemistry and English. And you write the exam and the whole country takes the exam, all the high school graduates. And they choose the top 1,200 out of a few 100,000 people. And if you make it, you get admitted and it's essentially free education.
It's free, no tuition fees.
Yeah, it's completely free. So remarkably I got in and so I joined and that was the path. And then once I finished, after my undergraduate degree, the natural step for most students was to go to postgraduate studies in the US, so I applied to the US. That's how I ended up. And then I got a PhD. At that time, then I got a faculty position. I did a postdoc and then I got a faculty position at Brown University. So that essentially set my path. So it was not any, I didn't play with chemistry set, I didn't build little radios as a child. None of that. It was just a course of events at that time that took me through this path.
But you didn't have any dilemma going to engineering, going to science or medicine or...
No dilemma at all, because I was very comfortable with the math, physics and chemistry, and engineering was a natural path at that time.
And if you go back to that age, you would have done the same choice?
Probably, of course, if the circumstances were the same, probably I would have done the same. But if I were 18 years today, I would probably, the opportunities are very different. I would probably look at different things. I may go into data analytics or artificial intelligence or neuroscience. So one of those areas where there is a lot of opportunity for new discoveries and
But still science.
It could be science, it could be a startup, it could be a different kind of path rather than going into academia. But I absolutely love academia.
So a leader managing a big university or managing National Science Foundation and following science closely, how much time remains for the family? How you can balance things?
Yeah. So we have fortunately, I have had a very supportive family, and my wife, she had her own career in public health, but when we had to move, there was no issue at all. She was willing to accommodate, and our children, we took them traveling all over the world from a very young age. Both our daughters are grown up; they are on their own, and so we have more flexibility to move around, to explore the world.
So, what's your hobby?
Yeah. So there are a lot of things I like. I like to read whenever I can find the time. Usually current affairs, non-fiction, global affairs, policy, magazines, etc. I love to read books. I used to be very active in learning languages, but I don't have the time. Unless you practice, you lose touch with languages. So at a young age, I learned different languages, and for my PhD, I minored in French with an engineering major. But if you don't practice the language,
Vous parlez français aussi?
un petit peu. But unless you speak the language, and I'm not, my command of French at this point is not very good. But if I go spend 6 months or a year in Paris, the words will start to come back to me. I studied Hindi and Tamil in India. Again, if I go back to India and spend a few months, then things will come back. I love to travel. I love to walk. Whenever I travel, both my wife and I, we like to explore a new city or a surrounding as much on foot as possible. I also do what I would call amateur photography or semi-professional photography.
Yeah, we saw a photo of yours in the South Pole.
Yes. So especially, I think these days cameras are very sophisticated. Mobile phone. So I got interested about 10 years ago, even with at that time relatively more primitive iPhones and Android devices and so forth. It's not just the technology. Even if it's a 8 megapixel camera or a 12 megapixel camera, it's not the megapixels per se, but it's the angle, what objects you capture, and the timing of the capturing of the object. So I was very fortunate to have had the opportunity to travel to pretty much all 7 continents on Earth, and
7 being
Antarctica, yes. North and South America. So I've been in the Atacama Desert in Chile at more than 5,000 meter altitude.
You've been there also?
Because the NSF had a lot of telescopes there.
Yeah, I've been there, but short, only just.
Yeah, I was there for more than half a day. So I've been to South America, North America, the highest point of the Arctic Circle in Summit in Greenland, the South Pole, McMurdo, where NSF has a station in Antarctica, and lots of travel in Asia, Europe of course, and in Africa, from South Africa to Kenya to Tanzania. So I think this not only broadens your mind, you look for the right opportunity to take that rare picture that only you can get. So for example, I was traveling on a US Air Force plane in northwestern Greenland, and the pilot, I was standing behind the pilot in the cockpit, and he pointed out to a glacier called Jakobshavn, which had melted over the last 20 years because of the warming of the Arctic Circle. So I was able to capture a picture of that from the cockpit of an airplane, and taking pictures of Antarctica from the plane and also from the ground. So these are unique life experiences.
And mostly this was part of your job, or just a vacation and pleasure?
So those 2 examples I just mentioned were part of during official trips, but the photography was just a personal interest from the plane with my private camera. But sometimes we go on vacation and I try to take pictures.
It's a fascinating life. That's what we should pass this message to young people, because today not too many like science and engineering. But your example with this, you speak so passionate about your life. Your work has been a pleasure,
Yeah.
and also has been fulfilling in terms of successes, but also has been so diverse, going around the world, looking and even developing your hobby.
Yeah.
It's it's something that we should pass this message. We don't see so many engineers and scientists which have been in leadership positions like you, being so fulfilled in life.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that we see.
I've been very fortunate and lucky in some of the opportunities that came my way, so I'm grateful for them.
Lucky because it was because of hard work or plus luck, or both.
I think you need luck in life, no matter how much hard work you have. So, supporting family and, sometimes you're in the right place at the right time and opportunities come once in a while. And I've taken opportunities that I've not regretted, and I've let go of opportunities that I've not regretted. So sometimes you make some calculated decisions, sometimes you just have a gut feeling that this is, you don't know what lies ahead. You just take a plunge and hope that it works.
So you believe in gut cells?
Believe in gut, believe in taking risk, and believing
it's a measured risk, or
sometimes it's more than measured, because I've disrupted my life in many ways by when I'm comfortable in one job, taking a different job. The easiest thing would have been to say, okay, I'm not going to disrupt my life and I'm going to stay where I am. But going to Washington was a big jump, especially going from being an academic to be head of a government agency, a large government agency, with no prior Washington experience was a big risk. And then leaving that and going back to become a president of a university, and then moving last year from the US to Asia to take a leadership role in a university in a country outside of the US. Well, the US has been my primary home for many decades.
Did you get accustomed to the policy in Washington DC? How you were able to adapt to the...
Yeah, I think it was a wonderful experience, because I realized that if I had just stayed in academia, I would not have learned so many things that I learned in Washington. You have to testify to Congress, you work with Senate and Congress, and you realize, people tend to criticize government employees and so forth when they get frustrated. But on the other hand, there are so many dedicated people who make a lot of personal sacrifices to do public service, and you realize this.
And they respect the scientists.
They respect the scientists.
Because most of the politicians do not come from science and engineering.
No, they don't have a background in science and engineering, but one thing I found in Washington was on both sides, both on the Democratic side and Republican side, when you talk to senators and congressmen, they understand the importance of science to the country, but oftentimes it gets, when the budget hits and there are so many demands on a limited pool of resources, and that's when the struggle begins. But otherwise, it's people by and large appreciate the importance of science to the success of the economy.
So they respect the scientists.
They
science
do.
has a little bit of upper hand. They refer to the science in their decisions, or not so much.
But it depends. I mean, I wish there was more respect for science in Washington. But on the other hand, historically, there is an appreciation for the need for science, even in today's climate.
Okay. Who will be the next president calling you?
I don't know yet, but I'm not waiting by the phone.
No, it's a real pleasure and honor. I think you are an example for the young generation going to science and engineering.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.